Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my conclusions from the 2022 Tour de Suisse. We'll kick things off with the winner of the overall classification, and that was Geraint Thomas. The Ineos veteran proved that there's still life in the old dog yet, with a fantastic win. He was there on all the key stages, initially protecting Adam Yates, but then when he went home with a mild case of COVID, he took the leadership on himself and was present and correct in all the mountain stages, and then very nearly beat Renko Evenepoel in the time trial to win the race and take the race off Sergio Higuita. Conclusion number two is that I think the UCI Covid rules need to be looked at and need to change. We obviously saw a lot of positives during the race, with more than half the field either testing positive with symptoms, only mild, admittedly, testing positive just because they are, or teams sending the whole team home as a precaution. Now, I think everyone will agree that if a rider is ill, you send them home. If they're ill enough that they can't compete, send them home. They don't need a test to do that. If you're ill and unable to ride, you go home. The team doctors are there, the race doctors are there to say, no, let's send you home. If it's only mild, potentially, obviously depending on the symptoms, or if they're just testing positive, they shouldn't need to go home. Case in point is Peter Sagan. He has no symptoms and he feels well, and yet under the UCI protocol, he has to go home. It's ridiculous. He's fine. He isn't ill. Let him race. If they're ill, send them home. If you have to test, only test symptomatic. Come on, UCI, please consider these changes. Are they going to pull them out at the Tour de France? Could you imagine UAE the day before Paris with Pogacar in yellow? Could you imagine them sending him home if he tests positive? Or in week one, the day before the cobbled stage, could you imagine Alpecin sending Van der Poel home? No. Draw a line under the sand and treat it like any other illness, like the rest of the world is trying to do, please. Conclusion number three, back to the racing, is that it was great to see a lot of new riders winning, or also older riders returning to winning form. Day 1, 2, 3, and 4, we had that. We had Steve Williams winning his first World Tour stage in an amazing sprint. Nobody knew who he was. Listening to Hatch and Maggie Backstead trying to work out who it was, incredible. Day later, you had Andreas Legnesund nearly taking the yellow jersey, but took the stage win. So two new ones. Then day 3 and 4, you had the return to form of Peter Sagan, and day 4 we had Daryl Impey as well. It's fantastic to see Impey win again. He is such a likeable rider. Same with Sagan, and hopefully he can come back to the Tour de France, and hopefully he can maybe compete for the green jersey, maybe compete for stage wins. Either or would be fantastic to see. Fourth conclusion is that Thibaut Pinot seems to have got the ability to lose time while going for stage wins. Pretty dialed heading into the Tour de France, and he looks set to really target that King of the Mountains jersey and stages in the Alps or in the Pyrenees. He took a fantastic stage win up into Melbourne. He used that climb in the heat very patiently, catching rider by rider by rider, and then going solo inside the final 3 kilometers to win the stage. It's great to see Thibaut Pinot back yet again, and hopefully we can see him light up the Alps and the Pyrenees at the top. My fifth conclusion is that the empire that is Bora Hansgrohe keeps rolling on. Following their victory in the Giro, they have had a fantastic Tour de Suisse. Kick things off on day 5 with Alexander Vlasov winning the stage and taking the race lead. And despite him having to pull out with COVID, they still managed to take the lead. This time with Sergio Higuita, and they had Max Schachmann and Felix Groschartner up in the GC as well. Didn't take the overall win this time. Higuita's TT wasn't quite up to the level of Thomas, but it's been yet again a fantastic week. And as we head to the Tour de France, I really think they can target the podium against Rog, Pog, and Vingegaard. My final Tour de Suisse conclusion is that Renko at Evenepoel still has a lot to learn tactically in order to compete or potentially compete in Grand Tours. We saw him this week looking okay in the mountains. He wasn't with the best. He lost time, but he's looked better. He looked better than he did against the best at other races this year. But the thing that let him down was a day where he really thought he could target and really thought he could win. The stage that Alexander Vlasov won in and around Mendrisio, he lost 2.5 minutes or something on a stage where you thought he would be able to probably win the race. And that will concern him. He is getting better, I think, in the long climbs against the best. I think he just needs a bit of patience with that, and I hope the team give him that. But there's a lot to learn tactically, and he needs to realise he can't just use his ridiculous power to win a race like the Tour de Suisse or Grand Tours. Thank you very much for watching my conclusions from the 2022 Tour de Suisse. Join me tomorrow where I begin my preview to the Tour de France, where I'll be looking at each individual teams and what I think they're going to achieve or could achieve at the Tour.